Welcome to the introductory video series for the Foundational Public Health Services Capacity and Cost Assessment Tool. This is Video 5, Public Health Workforce Calculator, Needed Labor, and Full Implementation. This video, the fifth and final in the series, focuses on three essential tabs within the FPHS Capacity and Cost Assessment Tool: Needed Labor, Full Implementation, and the Public Health Workforce Calculator. These tabs are designed to help local and state health departments estimate the workforce and funding necessary to fully implement the FPHS. Together, they provide a structured planning framework to identify staffing and resource gaps, estimate full implementation costs, and support justification for funding or systems transformation. At the end of this video, you should be able to describe the purpose and outputs of the tab, understand the needed data inputs for the tab, be able to locate the major components within the tab, and be able to add data into the tab to generate the desired outputs. The Needed Labor tab allows departments to estimate how many full-time equivalents, or FTEs, and associated labor costs are required for full FPHS implementation. Departments can define ideal staffing levels for each foundational capability and foundational area using either an incremental method or a zero-based budgeting approach. The incremental method builds on current staffing levels, while the zero-based approach starts from scratch. The information entered in this tab automatically populates the Full Implementation tab. The Full Implementation tab expands upon the labor estimates by incorporating non-labor costs. It combines labor data from the Needed Labor tab with new inputs for contracts, facilities, office supplies, technology, and pass-through funding to offer a comprehensive estimate of the resources required to deliver the FPHS in full. The Public Health Workforce Calculator tab is an optional but highly recommended tool that connects to an external staffing model. It offers a data-informed benchmark of the minimum number of FTEs required to deliver FPHS based on department characteristics such as size, structure, and peer comparisons. These estimates, once entered, automatically populate the Needed Labor and Full Implementation tabs. The Public Health Workforce Calculator worksheet is designed to estimate how much staffing effort, measured in full-time equivalents or FTEs, is needed to fully implement the FPHS. Most of the information in this tab is automatically pulled from two earlier parts of the FPHS CCA tool, the current spending and self-assessment worksheets. As a result, the only field users need to complete here is a self-assessment of how their department's needs compare to peer organizations. This estimate is especially useful for departments in decentralized systems serving populations under 500,000, though others may still find the results helpful. The FTE projections generated here are then carried forward into the Full Implementation worksheet to support staffing and cost planning. Please note, the Public Health Workforce Calculator tab is an optional but highly recommended tool to support staffing estimation. The Needed Labor tab uses these projected FTEs to estimate labor costs for full implementation. Users enter the number of FTEs needed by staff category, along with the average salary and benefit levels. These labor cost estimates should reflect the resources required to deliver all FPHS, including services the department is not currently providing. While the goal is to develop estimates grounded in realistic assumptions, users are expected to apply professional judgment in the absence of hard data. These estimates are intended to be forward-looking, and departments are encouraged to use current or anticipated compensation rates. Adjustments based on future staffing scenarios, competitive salaries, or strategic hiring priorities are acceptable, but should be documented in the assessment. Completion of this worksheet should involve programmatic staff working closely with finance personnel under the direction of the assessment point of contact. The Full Implementation tab expands upon the estimates from the Needed Labor tab by adding non-labor expenditures. The labor cost and FTE fields are automatically filled based on prior entries. Users are then prompted to enter projected costs for contracts, equipment, technology, materials, training, and pass-through funding for each FPHS service area. Similar to the labor section, the goal is to estimate the total resources necessary to implement all FPHS, not just those currently delivered. These estimates should reflect present or future costs and can include ideal scenarios such as movement towards outsourcing certain functions or expanding infrastructure. Program staff and finance teams are again encouraged to collaborate in completing this section, and any assumptions should be clearly noted for transparency.
We will start with the Public Health Workforce Calculator tab. The Public Health Workforce Calculator is an optional, online resource separate from the FPHS Capacity and Cost Assessment tool that can assist with estimating the full-time equivalents needed to fully implement the foundational public health services. This tab takes the FTEs entered in the Current Labor tab and percent delivered by agency from the Self-Assessment tab and organizes those data for convenient entry to the expanded advanced calculator. The only field that requires judgment is the last column, need relative to peers. For each foundational capability and area, you will select whether your jurisdiction needs are average, less, much less, more, or much more compared to similar jurisdictions. If wishing to use the calculator, please use the instructions on this tab to enter your data into the online calculator, depicted here. After those data have been submitted within the calculator, there will be outputs for FTE expected for each capability and area. Enter those values here into the FTE expected column. The total FTE expected and FPHS FTE needed per capability and area are automatically calculated. The FTE expected will then be populated in the Needed Labor tab. Please note, the calculator only outputs FTEs for the foundational public health services. The community-specific services are not included. Let's move on to the Needed Labor tab. This tab is structured and functions nearly identically to the Current Labor tab described in a prior video. Please view that video for a description of error flags that may occur through data entry. In this tab, you'll be asked to estimate the workforce full-time equivalents and expenditures needed to fully implement the foundational public health services. Two suggested methods for your approach are the incremental method and the zero-based budget method. In the incremental method, start with copying the separate personnel and FPHS allocation sections from the Current Labor tab. Then, paste them in the respective sections of this tab. Next, add additional personnel or change allocation decisions to fully implement each capability and area. This method is simpler, but runs the risk of reinforcing existing barriers. In the zero-based budget method, start from scratch and build your health department from the ground up, choosing staff that may best deliver the foundational public health services. This method is more challenging, but may also be more practical and rewarding. This worksheet also has features to assist you with your estimation. First, if you use the Public Health Workforce Calculator, described earlier in this video, the Public Health Workforce Calculator FTE expected will be present below the totals to offer you with FTE targets, and also a difference between totals from the table below and those targets. Consider the targets carefully, as the calculator may not fully understand your jurisdiction and may over or underestimate. Next, there are several fields that populate with the total FTEs and total labor costs entered in the Current Labor tab for reference against your estimates. Flags will be present in cells immediately to the right of these totals if your needs estimates in this tab are lower than what were entered in the Current Labor tab. Please note, those totals also include the foundational public health services and the community-specific services. Lastly, adjacent to those cells are FPHS FTE and percent FPHS for this tab's needs estimates. Now let's enter some example data to see how the Needed Labor tab works. In this example, we will demonstrate data entry for a single occupation to resolve gaps. In your work, you may need to either add additional personnel or reallocate effort for multiple staff to arrive at your full implementation estimates. Let's assume that the calculator FTE estimates were accurate and River County Public Health leadership did not identify any needed changes. Presently, this tab has some capabilities in areas that have full staffing, though there are gaps. Perhaps these gaps could be resolved through a population health planner who can focus on department infrastructure and some population health needs. We'll move over to the allocation side so we can allocate their 1 FTE across the necessary foundational capabilities and areas. So for example, for this population health planner, we might expect that they could provide 0.05 FTE to support assessment and surveillance, 0.05 FTE to assist with partnerships, 0.15 FTE to support strategic planning activities within organizational competencies, 0.05 FTE to assist with policy development, 0.1 FTE to assist with preparedness planning, and then 0.15 FTE in each of the foundational areas other than access to support population health planning for these foundational areas. Now we can see that the gaps have been fully resolved for the different foundational capabilities and areas versus the targets that were present. This resolves all of those gaps, but remember, your department may determine that the calculator targets may be somewhat high or low for your community needs. Lastly, this tab only estimates the personnel and labor costs needed to fully implement the foundational public health services. Your department may determine that you may want to have new staff take on services that you currently contract out, therefore increasing your staffing needs. Or you may determine that it is more efficient or effective to share services or resources and collaborate toward full implementation, therefore lowering your staffing needs. Now that we've estimated labor needs in the Needed Labor tab, let's move on to the Full Implementation tab. This worksheet builds on the work already completed by carrying over the needed labor data and combining them with projected non-labor expenditures. Together, these inputs provide a complete picture of what it would take to fully implement the foundational public health services in your department. The data entry for this tab is identical to that of the current spending tab, covered previously, and follows the approaches described for the Needed Labor tab, described earlier in this video, either the incremental method or the zero-based budget method. We will forgo an example scenario, but we'll leave you with the following considerations. The labor section includes all of the data entered in the prior Needed Labor tab, so no changes are needed. For direct contracts, but also pass-throughs and transfers, consider carefully whether current contracts, pass-throughs, or transfers may be replaced with new staff, or whether it may be more efficient or effective to share services or resources and collaborate toward full implementation through new contracts, transfers, or pass-throughs. For the other operating expenditures and also capital expenditures, consider carefully whether any new or increased costs may be needed related to staffing or services changes needed for full implementation.
As mentioned, this is the last of 5 videos in this instructional series. If you require assistance with material that is beyond the scope of these videos, we invite you to visit FAB's assessment website, and you can also reach out to FAB or the Center for Public Health Systems at the University of Minnesota via email.